When the 7.2 magnitude earthquake hit the building, everyone panicked and ran upstairs. But Bobby Martinez was running downstairs, because 20 years of mine rescue experience told him the real exit route was hidden where nobody else would think to look. From which city in the world are you watching this story today? If stories like this move you, consider subscribing to Unseen Legends for more tales of hidden expertise walking among us. The 25-story Meridian Tower stood like a glass and steel monument to San Francisco's financial district, its sleek facade reflecting the morning sun as thousands of office workers began another routine Tuesday. Inside, the building hummed with the quiet efficiency of modern business, elevator bells chiming, keyboards clicking, and coffee machines brewing the fuel that powered the city's economic engine. On the 15th floor, Bobby Martinez pushed his maintenance cart through the carpeted hallways of Henderson & Associates, a mid-sized accounting firm that occupied 3 floors of the tower. At 58, Bobby moved with the methodical precision of someone who'd spent 15 years learning every pipe, wire, and structural beam in the building. His grey maintenance uniform and quiet demeanor made him practically invisible to the white-collar professionals who hurried past him each day. To the accountants, lawyers, and consultants who worked in Meridian Tower, Bobby was simply part of the building's infrastructure. He fixed leaky faucets, replaced burnt-out light bulbs, and ensured their climate-controlled environment remained comfortable and functional. They had no idea that Robert Martinez had once been one of the most skilled mine rescue specialists in North America, or that his seemingly simple maintenance work was informed by decades of experience with structural engineering, emergency evacuation, and keeping people alive in collapsed underground spaces. At 10:47 a.m. Pacific time, Bobby was replacing air filter units in the mechanical room on the 14th floor when he felt something that made him pause. A subtle vibration through the building's steel frame, barely perceptible, but unmistakably different from the normal settling and mechanical vibrations he'd learned to recognize over 15 years. He'd felt similar tremors before, working deep underground in mines where geological instability was a constant threat. His trained senses could distinguish between equipment vibration, settling, and the deep rolling movement that preceded something far more dangerous. Bobby set down his tools and moved to the building's central support column, placing his palm against the steel surface. Through the metal, he could feel the structure's response to forces that most people would never notice. But Bobby Martinez had spent 20 years learning to read the early warning signs of catastrophic structural failure. 3 floors above, Jennifer Walsh was presenting quarterly financial projections to a conference room full of Henderson & Associates partners. The meeting was running long, and several attendees were checking their watches when the first tremor hit. It started as a subtle swaying motion, barely enough to make the water in their coffee cups ripple. Jennifer paused mid-sentence, looking around the conference room with mild confusion. "Did anyone else feel that?" she asked. Before anyone could respond, the building's motion intensified. What had started as gentle swaying became a pronounced rolling motion that made everyone in the conference room grab for the table edges. In the mechanical room, Bobby Martinez was already in motion. 20 years of mine rescue experience had taught him to recognize the progression of structural failure, and what he was feeling through the building's frame told him they had perhaps 90 seconds before the situation became catastrophic. He grabbed his radio and switched to the building's emergency frequency. "Security desk, this is Bobby in maintenance. We have seismic activity. Initiate earthquake evacuation protocol immediately." The response came back crackling with static and confusion. "Bobby, we're getting reports of minor trembling. Doesn't seem serious enough for full evacuation." Bobby felt the building's motion intensify through his feet and hands. The vibrations were developing the deep, resonant frequency that meant the structure was being pushed beyond its design limits. "Trust me on this," Bobby transmitted urgently. "This is going to be major. Get everyone to emergency stairs now." On the 17th floor, the Henderson & Associates conference room had erupted into controlled panic as the building's swaying motion knocked pictures off walls and sent office supplies tumbling to the floor. "Everyone under the table," Jennifer Walsh shouted, her voice carrying the authority of someone trained in emergency procedures. But as 12 partners and associates crowded under the conference table, the building's motion suddenly intensified beyond anything they'd experienced. This wasn't the gentle rolling of a minor tremor. This was the violent, chaotic shaking of a major seismic event. Bobby Martinez was moving through the building's service corridors with the focused urgency of someone who understood exactly what they were dealing with. His 20 years in mine rescue had given him an intimate understanding of how structures behaved under stress, and everything he was feeling told him that Meridian Tower was approaching critical failure. The earthquake struck with full force at 10:49 a.m. The 7.2 magnitude tremor sent shockwaves through San Francisco's bedrock that reached Meridian Tower like a freight train hitting a house of cards. The building's steel frame, designed to withstand seismic forces, began flexing and swaying with motions that exceeded every engineering specification. On floors 15 through 20, office workers dove under desks as filing cabinets toppled and windows shattered. The building's emergency lighting system activated as primary power failed, casting everything in an eerie red glow. In the stairwells, panic took hold as hundreds of people tried to evacuate simultaneously. The narrow emergency stairs, designed for orderly evacuation, became bottlenecks of terrified humanity pushing and shoving toward exits that seemed impossibly far away. But Bobby Martinez wasn't heading for the emergency stairs. He was moving deeper into the building's mechanical areas, accessing service corridors and maintenance passages that existed on no public floor plan. 20 years of mine rescue work had taught him that when primary escape routes failed, survival depended on finding alternatives that others didn't know existed. Every building, like every mine, had hidden pathways that could mean the difference between life and death. On the 17th floor, Jennifer Walsh and her colleagues discovered their first major problem. The emergency exit door wouldn't open. The building's structural deformation had warped the door frame just enough to jam the release mechanism. "It's stuck," reported Marcus Chen, a senior partner who was throwing his full weight against the door. "The frame is bent." Through the conference room windows, they could see other office buildings in the financial district swaying like trees in a hurricane. Several windows had blown out of nearby structures, and smoke was beginning to rise from the direction of the waterfront. "The elevators are completely down," reported Sarah Kim, who'd been trying to reach the main lobby via the building directory system. "Emergency stairs are jammed with people, and there are reports of structural damage blocking exit routes." Jennifer felt a chill of recognition. They weren't just dealing with earthquake damage. They were potentially trapped in a building that might not survive the ongoing seismic activity. Bobby Martinez was 3 floors below them, moving through a mechanical corridor that ran parallel to the building's main support structure. His flashlight beam revealed stress fractures in the concrete walls and twisted metal conduits that told the story of a building being pushed to its breaking point. But Bobby was looking for something specific. During his 15 years maintaining Meridian Tower, he'd discovered features that the building's current occupants didn't know existed. Emergency access routes that had been installed during construction, but sealed off during later renovations. He reached a section of wall that looked identical to every other wall in the corridor, but Bobby knew that behind this particular wall lay a forgotten escape route, a service elevator shaft that connected directly to the building's sub-basement and emergency exit system. Using his maintenance tools, Bobby began removing the wall covering that had hidden the emergency access for over a decade. 3 floors above, the situation was deteriorating rapidly. The conference room group had managed to break out of their meeting room, but the main corridors were filling with debris from collapsed ceiling tiles and damaged light fixtures. "We need to get to the emergency stairs," Jennifer insisted, leading her colleagues through the maze of cubicles toward what should have been their designated escape route. But when they reached the emergency stairwell, they discovered their worst fear realized. The stairs themselves were blocked by structural debris from upper floors, and the stairwell was filling with smoke from what appeared to be electrical fires. "We can't go down this way," Marcus announced, coughing from the smoke that was beginning to fill their floor. "And we can't stay here," Sarah added, pointing to ceiling tiles that were beginning to sag ominously. That's when they heard Bobby Martinez's voice coming from the building's emergency intercom system. "Attention floors 15 through 20. Bobby's calm voice cut through the chaos. "This is building maintenance. Primary evacuation routes are compromised. I'm opening an alternative escape route through the mechanical systems. If you can hear this message, proceed to the northwest service corridor on your floor. Look for the maintenance worker with the flashlight." Jennifer looked at her colleagues with a mixture of hope and skepticism. The maintenance worker. How is the janitor supposed to help us? But Marcus was already moving toward the service corridor. "At this point, I'll follow anyone who sounds like they know what they're doing." Bobby Martinez was working with the focused intensity of someone performing a familiar task under deadly pressure. The hidden service elevator he'd uncovered was operational, but it required manual control systems that existed only in the building's sub-basement. This was exactly the kind of technical rescue problem he'd solved hundreds of times in collapsed mines. When primary systems failed, survival depended on understanding backup systems that most people didn't know existed. As he worked to restore power to the service elevator, Bobby's mind was running through the complex logistics of evacuating 50 people through a route designed for maintenance access. It would require precise timing, calm leadership, and the kind of improvised engineering that he'd perfected during 2 decades of underground rescue operations. "Bobby, what's your status?" came the voice of building security over his radio. "I've got access to the service elevator system," Bobby replied while connecting backup power lines. "It'll handle 6 people at a time, direct to sub-basement emergency exit, but I need to coordinate the evacuation to prevent panic and overcrowding. How do we know the sub-basement exit is clear?" Bobby paused in his work, considering the question that would determine whether his plan saved lives or trapped people in a different kind of danger. "Because I walked that route yesterday during routine maintenance inspection," he replied. "The sub-basement exit connects directly to the building's emergency tunnel system. It was designed as a backup evacuation route, but sealed off during the 2010 renovations." 20 minutes after the earthquake began, Bobby Martinez had successfully restored power to the forgotten service elevator and established communication with the stranded office workers on floors 15 through 20. Ladies and gentlemen, Bobby's voice came through emergency speakers. This is Robert Martinez, building maintenance supervisor. I know you're scared, but I have a way to get you out safely. Jennifer Walsh was the first to reach the service corridor where Bobby had said to meet. She found a man in maintenance coveralls whose calm demeanor seemed impossibly steady given their circumstances. Are you the maintenance worker who's been on the radio? She asked. Yes, ma'am. Bobby Martinez. I'm going to get you and your colleagues to safety, but I need you to trust me and follow instructions exactly. As other office workers began gathering in the service corridor, Jennifer studied Bobby's face. There was something about his calm authority that seemed far beyond what she'd expect from a building maintenance worker. Mr. Martinez, how do you know about alternative escape routes? Bobby was checking the service elevator's manual controls as he answered. Because part of my job is knowing this building better than anyone else. And because I've had experience with emergency evacuations in challenging conditions. What he didn't mention was that his experience with challenging conditions included rescuing miners from collapsed tunnels, coordinating emergency evacuations in underground spaces where a single mistake meant death, and 20 years of keeping people alive in situations where conventional rescue methods had failed. 6 people at a time, Bobby announced as the service elevator car arrived. I'll operate the controls manually. The ride takes about 90 seconds to reach the sub-basement. When you get there, follow the lighted pathway to the emergency exit. Marcus Chen looked at the small service elevator with obvious concern. Are you sure this thing is safe? It looks like it hasn't been used in years. It's been maintained and inspected regularly, Bobby replied. I've tested all the safety systems personally. Jennifer made the decision that would save her life and the lives of her colleagues. I'll go first with 5 others. If Bobby says it's safe, I believe him. As the first group descended in the service elevator, Bobby used his radio to coordinate with the remaining office workers. His calm, professional manner was keeping panic at bay, but he knew they were working against time. Aftershocks were likely, and the building's structural integrity was continuing to deteriorate. Second group, 6 people, step into the elevator car, Bobby directed. Remember, when you reach the sub-basement, follow the lighted path directly to the emergency exit. Don't explore or delay. Marcus Chen was in the second group, and as the elevator descended, he found himself studying the man operating the controls with such professional competence. Bobby, Marcus asked, what did you do before you worked here? Bobby's hands moved over the manual controls with practiced precision. Different kind of maintenance work, underground operations, like subway systems. Something like that, Bobby replied, his focus remaining on the elevator's descent indicators. What Marcus didn't understand was that underground operations meant 20 years as a mine rescue specialist, certified in structural engineering, emergency evacuation, and the kind of technical rescue work that saved lives in collapsed underground spaces. By the time the fourth group was descending in the service elevator, aftershocks were beginning to hit the building. Bobby could feel the structural vibrations through his feet and hands, and his experience told him they had perhaps 15 minutes before the building's condition became untenable. Last group, Bobby announced to the remaining office workers. 8 people this time. We're running out of time. As the final group prepared to enter the service elevator, Jennifer Walsh had returned from the sub-basement via the emergency stairs to help coordinate the evacuation. Bobby, she said quietly, I don't know how to thank you. That emergency exit route you found probably saved all our lives. Bobby was monitoring aftershock activity through the building's frame, his experienced senses tracking the progression of structural stress that could lead to partial collapse. Just doing my job, ma'am, but we need to get this last group out immediately. The building's stability is degrading faster than I'd hoped. As the final elevator load descended towards safety, Bobby Martinez made one last check of the building's upper floors to ensure no one had been left behind. His radio crackled with reports from emergency responders who were finally able to reach the building's exterior. Building maintenance, this is SFFD Battalion Chief Williams. We show successful evacuation of all occupants from your location. Outstanding work. Copy that, Chief. All civilians evacuated via emergency route. Building maintenance heading to final exit now. But as Bobby moved toward his own escape route, a massive aftershock hit the building with enough force to shift the structure's foundation. Emergency lighting failed, plunging the service corridors into darkness, and Bobby heard the ominous sound of structural members beginning to fail. He was still 3 floors above the sub-basement when the building's primary support systems began giving way. This was the moment that separated routine maintenance work from life-and-death rescue operations. Bobby Martinez was trapped in a deteriorating building, with conventional escape routes blocked, facing exactly the kind of technical rescue challenge he'd trained for during 20 years in the mining industry. Using his flashlight and intimate knowledge of the building's mechanical systems, Bobby began moving through ventilation shafts and utility conduits that would take him below the zones of structural failure. This is Martinez, he radioed to emergency responders. I'm making alternate exit via mechanical systems. Do not attempt interior rescue. Building stability is critical. For the next 20 minutes, Bobby Martinez demonstrated why mine rescue specialists were considered among the most skilled technical rescue professionals in the world. Moving through spaces designed for cables and pipes, he navigated by feel and experience through a building that was slowly collapsing around him. When he finally emerged from the sub-basement emergency exit, Bobby found 50 grateful office workers waiting to thank the maintenance man who'd saved their lives. Jennifer Walsh approached him as emergency medical personnel checked evacuees for injuries. "Bobby, I don't understand how you knew about that escape route, and how did you know it would be safe when the regular exits were blocked?" Bobby sat on an emergency vehicle's bumper, finally allowing himself to feel the exhaustion of coordinating a technical rescue operation under impossible conditions. "Ma'am, sometimes you learn things in previous jobs that turn out to be useful in unexpected situations. What kind of previous job teaches you emergency building evacuation?" Bobby was quiet for a moment, watching firefighters assess the building he'd called home for 15 years. Meridian Tower was still standing, but it would require major structural repairs before anyone could safely work there again. "I used to work in mine rescue," he said finally. 20 years in Colorado and Nevada. When mines collapsed or flooded, my job was to get people out alive. Marcus Chen, who'd been listening to the conversation, felt pieces clicking into place. Mine rescue. That's why you knew about structural stress and alternative exit routes. Underground rescue work teaches you that when primary systems fail, survival depends on finding alternatives that other people don't know exist, Bobby explained. Every building, like every mine, has hidden pathways. You just have to know how to find them and use them safely. Over the following weeks, as investigators analyzed the Meridian Tower evacuation, Bobby Martinez's role became clear. His quick recognition of seismic danger, knowledge of forgotten building systems, and expert coordination of the emergency evacuation had prevented what could have been a major casualty event. The building's original architectural plans revealed that Bobby had indeed located and activated an emergency escape system that had been sealed off during renovations years earlier. Without his intervention, the 50 office workers trapped on upper floors would have faced potential injury or death when primary evacuation routes failed. Mr. Martinez, the lead investigator, asked during his interview, "Your response time and technical knowledge were remarkable. How long have you been planning for this type of emergency?" "Every day for 15 years, Bobby replied. "When you're responsible for building maintenance, you have to understand how systems work and how they fail. My background in mine rescue just gave me additional perspective on emergency evacuation. Can you tell us about your mine rescue experience?" Bobby shifted uncomfortably, clearly preferring to avoid detailed discussion of his past. "I worked for Mountain States Mining Company for 20 years, technical rescue specialist. When miners were trapped by cave-ins, equipment failure, or flooding, my team went in to get them out." "How many rescue operations?" "Over 300 successful evacuations, 0 fatalities among people we were assigned to rescue." The number was staggering. Bobby Martinez had spent 2 decades saving lives in some of the most dangerous rescue scenarios imaginable, then quietly applied those skills to building maintenance work that kept office workers safe. "Why did you leave mine rescue for building maintenance?" Bobby looked out the window toward the financial district where Meridian Tower stood, damaged but repairable. "Because after 20 years of dealing with emergencies, I wanted a job where people stayed safe from the beginning. Building maintenance seemed like prevention instead of crisis response." But Jennifer Walsh, who'd stayed in touch with Bobby after the evacuation, had a different perspective. "Bobby didn't really leave rescue work," she told reporters who interviewed evacuees. "He just changed the environment. For 15 years he's been keeping all of us safe by maintaining the systems that prevent emergencies. When prevention failed, his rescue skills saved our lives." 6 months later, Bobby Martinez received commendations from the San Francisco Fire Department, the State Office of Emergency Management, and the Building Engineering Association. But he remained characteristically modest about his contributions. "I just used my training to help people in a dangerous situation," he said during the commendation ceremony. "Any experienced rescue worker would have done the same thing." The truth was more complex. Bobby Martinez had possessed a rare combination of technical knowledge, emergency experience, and calm leadership that had turned potential disaster into successful evacuation. His 20 years of mine rescue work had prepared him for exactly the kind of structural emergency that most building maintenance workers would never encounter. During the ceremony, Marcus Chen spoke about the importance of recognizing expertise in unexpected places. "We assumed that because Bobby's job title was maintenance worker, his capabilities were limited to fixing plumbing and changing light bulbs," Marcus told the audience. "We had no idea we were working in a building maintained by one of the most experienced rescue specialists in America." Bobby's story became required reading in emergency management courses, illustrating the importance of recognizing and utilizing all available expertise during crisis situations. The lesson, Bobby would tell emergency management students, isn't that every maintenance worker is secretly a rescue specialist. The lesson is that skills and experience come in many forms, and emergency situations require every available resource. He'd learned something important during those terrifying minutes in the collapsing building. You could change your job, your environment, even your official responsibilities, but you couldn't escape the obligation to use your skills when people needed help. Experience is a responsibility, he would tell building maintenance conferences. When you know how to solve problems that others can't solve, you have to step forward. The job title doesn't matter. What matters is that people need help, and you're capable of providing it. Today, building maintenance workers across California receive training in emergency evacuation procedures based on techniques developed by Bobby Martinez. His methods for utilizing hidden building systems and coordinating technical evacuations are standard procedure in seismic preparedness programs. But perhaps his most important contribution was demonstrating that the most extraordinary expertise often comes disguised as ordinary work. For 20 years he'd saved lives in collapsed mines and underground emergencies. Then he'd spent 15 more years quietly maintaining building systems, content to let others assume he was just another maintenance worker. When a 7.2 magnitude earthquake shook San Francisco, Bobby Martinez proved that true expertise doesn't retire. It just waits quietly for the moment when someone needs it to save their life. Sometimes the most capable person in your building is checking pipes in the basement. Sometimes the maintenance worker who fixes your air conditioning has experience that could mean the difference between survival and disaster. Sometimes the man in coveralls carrying a toolbox has spent decades learning how to keep people alive when everything else fails. Have you ever discovered that someone's background was far more impressive than their current job suggested? Tell us about it in the comments below. And if this story reminds you to respect the quiet professionals around you, subscribe to Unseen Legends for more tales of hidden expertise. Because sometimes the person replacing your light bulb once guided hundreds of people to safety through collapsed underground tunnels. And when the earth shakes and buildings fail, that experience might be exactly what saves your life. This story is a work of fiction created to honor the spirit of professional expertise and the dedicated maintenance workers who keep us safe every day. Any resemblance to actual persons or events is purely coincidental.